very warm welcome to you. You're watching RT International with me, Nikki Aaron. It's great to have you with us. Now, mapping out his plan for solving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In the last hour, Donald Trump's presented to the world his much-heralded peace plan. The big reveal is the culmination of Trump's reversal of U.S. policy in the region, often in defiance of the international community. Now, there's been a lot of hype about Trump's long-awaited so-called deal of the century in the lead-up to the announcement. He called it an historic breakthrough and a win-win for both sides. Now, the 80-page proposal, Trump said, is the most detailed ever put forward and aims to realize the two-state solution between Israel and Palestine. First of all, it will give Jerusalem will remain Israel's undivided capital and will also give the Palestinians a chance to master the art of statehood, in Trump's words there. Well, let's get more on this now from our correspondents. We're now joined by Caleb Morpin, who's joining us from New York, and Paula Slier from Tel Aviv. Let's go to Caleb first. Caleb, could you wrap up the finer points of the press conference we just heard, please?
Indeed. It was quite a triumphant and jubilant atmosphere in the room. Lots of applause and lots of self-congratulatory words. Now, Trump hailed this proposal as the deal of the century, and he said it is a win-win agreement that will be good for both Israel and Palestinians. This is Donald Trump putting forward his proposal.
My vision presents a win-win opportunity for both sides, a realistic two-state solution that resolves the risk of Palestinian statehood to Israel's security. Today, Israel has taken a giant step toward peace.
Now, the deal would essentially give Israel total control of Jerusalem, which the United States recognizes as Israel's capital, and it would facilitate the King of Jordan, who would basically be making sure that Muslims remained able to visit the Al-Aqsa Mosque and holy site. The USA would recognize a Palestinian state when terrorism is renounced, according to Donald Trump. Now, other details of the plan are emerging. It is being hailed as the longest proposal. Now, when the Israeli prime minister spoke, he emphasized that it was a great deal for Israel, but he didn't seem to mention it being good for Palestinians, as Trump mentioned. This is what Netanyahu had to say.
It's a great plan for Israel. It's a great plan for peace. Frankly, Mr. President, given all that you have already done for Israel, I'm not surprised.
Now, in addition, Donald Trump used the opportunity to defend his decision to withdraw from Iran's nuclear deal, as well as his decision to kill top Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. And he continued to emphasize his loyalty and commitment to supporting Israel and maintaining the U.S. alliance with Israel in his remarks. Quite a jubilant atmosphere in the room, a lot of self-congratulatory words. It seemed that those present were very, very happy with what was said, not just Americans, but also Israelis that were present.
OK, Caleb, thank you for that. Let's go to Tel Aviv now, and our correspondent there, Paula Slier, gauging reaction for us. Paula, tell us more.
Well, the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has already rejected the proposed text, and it's unlikely that now that we've heard these statements and see the full text, he's going to accept it. There's a lot of anger in the Palestinian world, and certainly they are echoing the view that this is the most favorable to Israel peace plan that's ever been put forward by an American president. The Palestinian leadership is calling for a day of rage on Wednesday. They're also asking Palestinians to boycott American goods and to remove any kind of American signs or signatures that are on buildings or institutions across the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip. We also know that the Arab League is calling this weekend for an emergency meeting, so certainly a lot of anger coming from the Palestinian camp.
We call on the United Nations to intervene immediately, given that the announcement of the Trump deal from the political side is against international legal decisions approved and the national rights of our Palestinian people.
The region is on the verge of a dangerous earthquake that will strike to the core of the Palestinian issue and will hit the death of the West Bank and the entire Palestinian cause and the region.
Now, it's still too soon to have official Palestinian reaction after the statements by Trump and Netanyahu, but a few things that people will be pointing out are firstly that it was Trump and Netanyahu. There was no Palestinian representation in the Oval Office or at the White House, and that you're also talking here about a president that's facing impeachment, a prime minister that's being indicted, both presenting themselves as leaders of peace, which would seem to be, for those that are critical of what they've put forward, far from the truth. At the same time, the American president thanked all the Israelis and all the Americans who had been involved in putting this together, and notably absent was a list of Palestinians who have contributed to it. One of the immediate questions that people are asking is that the plan talks about East Jerusalem being the capital of a Palestinian state, but at the same time recognizes Jerusalem as the undivided capital of Jewish Israel. So many are already putting forward the question as to whether or not this is a contradiction and how exactly this is going to materialize. The Israeli police have gone on high alert along the Jordanian border in anticipation that there could be riots and demonstrations in the coming hours. At the same time, it's important to take a look at how events unfolded for us to actually get to this point.
Of a new approach to by making the same failed assumptions.
Now, not everybody in Israel is singing the praises of this so-called deal of the century. You have an umbrella organization representing all the secular movements in Israel. They've come out quite strongly saying that they are against it. They'll not approve of any kind of Palestinian state. It's also worth noting the timing. At the beginning of March, Israel is going to its third election as the Prime Minister struggles to maintain control. And many people here in Israel pointing out that certainly the press conference that's just been held is a feather in the cap of Netanyahu, and no doubt will win him brownie points when those polls happen.
Paula Sleer and Caleb Morpin, thank you both for joining me here on RT International with the latest. Well, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, has called this deal fantastic. But what is the perspective of the Palestinians? Let's cross live to our guests now, to Dimitri Delani, a member of the Fatah Revolutionary Council. Thank you for joining us on the programme. Now, as we heard, Netanyahu sang the praises of Trump's deal. But what's the Palestinian thoughts on this?
There is no deal. A deal needs two parties. Whatever they have put on in that comedy show is a vision for the right-wing Zionist movement. We have a Christian Zionist movement in the United States. We have a Jewish Zionist movement in the United States. And we have a right-wing Zionist movement headed by Netanyahu in Israel. These three Zionist sects have gathered and came out with a vision. This has nothing to do with the deal, has nothing to do with the Palestinians, has nothing to do with the international law, has nothing to do with the UN resolutions, has nothing to do with agreements already signed by the Palestinians and the Israelis. What happened today was a comedy show in which President Trump played the role of an old car salesman who failed miserably trying to sell a junk car as if it is a brand new car. Whatever he's saying as a vision is nothing but junk. And we have his sidekick, the brown-nosed Netanyahu, trying to kiss up to his master. And they're thanking each other in a very friendly way that has nothing to do with us as Palestinians, has nothing to do with reality. And whatever the so-called deal, that vision, is failure already, because there is no other part to deal with. And I mean, one of the funniest moments when they talked about Kushner's wisdom, and I thought that was so hilarious, because this idiot has failed in everything, including whatever he came up with in writing this vision.
Well, Trump seemed very confident and convinced that the Palestinians would like the deal. Why was he acting so confident?
Trump lies as he speaks all the time. Look, we have one person, an impeached president, President Trump, and next to him, a prime minister who was charged with corruption just this morning. Both, one of them, the Prime Minister, has elections in 1 month and 2 days or 3 days. The other one has in less than 10 months his elections. They have to come up with something. So they came up with this very silly, cheaply produced, so they thought it would be comedy. It's not really funny because nobody in the world would let them, including us the Palestinians, to win the elections at our expense. Look, we don't have the military power to enforce any solution in this region, but for most definitely we have the will and we have the precedent in making every attempt to impose any solution that we don't like a huge failure that takes away presidents and prime ministers. We've done that before. We stood up to such attempts before, but these two idiots, these two clowns, do not learn from past experience, and that what happened today is the amount of arrogance and distance from reality, distance from the world, the international law, the UN resolutions, realities on the ground. Trump acted, he was swinging left to right while receiving praise from his sidekick. It was so pathetic but funny at the same time because he's an idiot. Look at him when he was swinging left and right. Is this the leader of the world? Are you kidding me? This guy cannot be a mayor in the West Bank. He will be toppled in 24 hours. At the end of the day, he's an impeached president that should no longer be the president of the United States. At the same time, the corrupt Prime Minister Netanyahu should not be in his post. As Palestinians, we look at this, or our person look at this, as a joke, as a failed comedy show, that we have a lot of serious work on the ground to make sure it fails, just like we failed other attempts that try to prey on our human and national rights as Palestinians.
Trump said in that press conference that as part of the deal, Palestinians will get twice as much territory as they do now, with a capital in eastern Jerusalem. How does that fit in with Jerusalem being the undivided capital of Israel?
I don't know if Trump knows what he's talking about, but there is a magic line. It says, Palestinian state along the 1967 borders and negotiations over the return of the refugees. These two simple sentences are the magic and the key for any peace deal. Anything less than that, we don't want it. It's bust. We already paid the price. We recognize the state of Israel. Israel has not recognized the state of Palestine. The United States recognizes the state of Israel. They don't recognize the state of Palestine. So, in other words, until the United States recognize the state of Palestine along the 1967 borders, with Jerusalem as its capital, I don't think there's a room for any negotiations over anything. We cannot be negotiating with two extremely right-wing Zionist ideologies, one living in the Oval Office or being moved by right-wing Zionist ideologues in the White House because he's too idiot to get into that. And we have another one in Tel Aviv. So we can't be negotiating against two parties. That's why, if the United States want to make amends with this, they have to come to common ground according to international law. It's called along the 1967 borders.
Well, Trump did say, he wants a win-win for both sides. He wants to give the Palestinians a chance to, quote, master the art of statehood. He wants to double the Palestinian territory. He wants to open an embassy there. He promised that no Palestinians will be uprooted from their homes. Can we not give him some kudos for trying to create a fair deal here?
No, we don't want to talk about... There is no uprooting of Palestinians. Well, we've been uprooted for the past 73 years. Now it's time to return the people that were uprooted to their land, to Palestine. I'll give you a simple example to explain this. If a thief steals your computer, police catches them, and the police then, being the United States, says, okay, you thief get to keep the computer, and you, the victim of the theft, you get to be free, and I'll bless you and I'll recognize you, and you should be happy. This is the so-called vision or so-called deal that Trump is talking about. He wants the Palestinians, he's equating with the Palestinians that were uprooted or being uprooted non-stop for 73 years with the settlers that came from Europe, some of them less than a month ago. And this is just tells you how much he's detached from the world and reality.
Dimitri Delani, member of the Fatah Revolutionary Council, thank you for your time.